Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Timothy's Academy. Uh, and what we'd like to do at Timothy's Academy is give discussions of people who have done great things or accomplished great things or have done things that others haven't done that are extraordinary things. And I think we have a person here from the sporting world. Usually we're talking about the academic world, like chats with my brother over literature, videos from my nephew playing musical instruments, all kinds of stuff we're trying to bring here culturally. And running and sport is part of our culture. And when you have a guy like I have here, Craig Lippert, Lippert, um, he's done some extraordinary things in his later years here, basically running a lot of marathons. And I'd like to talk with him about those marathons and maybe learn a thing or two from him and just admire some of these things that people do. And Craig, can you tell us why you got into marathon? How old were you? You don't have to say your age now if you don't want to, but can I ask how old you were when you were starting out marathoning and why did you decide to do that?
I didn't run my first marathon until I was 43 years old. Okay.
Wow.
Um, I was a college football player, and a mile was an extremely long way. I went in the Marine Corps at after college,
Yeah.
and I we had to every quarter we had a physical fitness test, and one of them was running 3 miles. Okay,
3 miles.
so yeah, so I did that, and I asked this gentleman one time, this gentleman said to me one time, "Hey, you could run 10 miles if you wanted to." And I go, "No way." And he kind of showed me, and he kind of took off from there. Um, but at that point in my life, we're talking, early 80s and things like that, I was still like smoking, okay? And that, even
Oh,
doing that, okay? So
sure.
anyway, in about 1995, I stopped the smoking and that. And I'd always been running a little. From my Marine Corps days, I became an air traffic controller, and it helped me relieve stress, by, running before work, running after work, things like that. But what happened one time, I always wanted to see if I could run like a half marathon. Okay, I'd done like 10 Ks at 6.2 miles. Half marathon's 13.1 miles. And a
Sure.
neighbor of mine goes, "Well, I'll run a half marathon with you if," he was doing mini triathlons. He goes, "If you do one of those with me." Okay. So I remember running that first half marathon, and it kind of got me excited. And after that, I go, "Gee, I wonder from a half marathon if I could step it up to a marathon." Okay. Unbeknownst to
Oh.
me, that it's a long step up. It's another 13.1 miles.
Yeah.
So, that's how it kind of started for me. My first one at 43 years old, I had didn't have coaches. I didn't train with a group or anything like that. I read it out of a book, how to run marathons. I probably didn't run more than 16 miles getting ready for the 26.2 miles. And my first marathon was very bad. Okay. I hadn't trained for it properly. And I ran 5 hours and something. And when I tell newcomers now what my time was and how long it took me, and they go, "You ran another one?" And I go, "Yeah," because I knew I could improve it a lot. And that's how it all took off for me.
Okay. And how many marathons have you run since then?
I've run 51 now.
51.
Okay.
Okay. That's
When I
one
was,
of the
as I was working, I was averaging probably 2.5 marathons a year up until 2010. And I retired from being an air traffic controller. And then I picked it up a little, probably three, four a year. And I like, this isn't always accepted practice, but if I was training for one, I'd usually do two. Two that were like 4 to 6 weeks apart. Because I go, I'm in shape for one, why not do two? And then I'd lay off a while and then I'd do it again. Let's say like a spring marathon, then a fall marathon, and that.
And how many marathons are you doing at this point in your life per year?
It's kind of changed. I turned 70. I'm 70 right now, soon to be 71. Um, Over the years, I've had some injuries, like a lot of us runners do. Like I said, I was a college football player, and pounding from there, pounding from running, I ended up having back surgery and knee surgery. So, since COVID, I've just run two, and but I have my last one was London, England, and I did that what 2 months ago, and I'm looking forward. I have Sydney now in about a month and a half, Australia.
Wow. Now you were doing this marathon running in various international places, even while you were working. I think you became a substitute teacher in the school district or something. Can you tell us what you did for your work and how you fit your training and marathon and traveling in with your work?
When I didn't do any international when I was air traffic control, I did as went there. I did all in the United States, whether it be New York or East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. I did a lot of that. I did my first international when I stopped being air traffic controller. I started sub teaching, and sub teaching was great for it. I didn't have to take time off. I just blocked time out to go travel.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I've Since 2016, ran in Munich, Germany, a marathon, Berlin, Germany, Stockholm, Sweden, and now just one in London and that. So
So those are the four international ones you've been, and all the other 46 or 47 were in the States.
one other international one, we have to include Vancouver, Canada. Okay, so I needed to get Canada. Okay, so
Yeah.
those are my five international ones I've done, and that. So I did Vancouver also.
Do you have any other international ones planned in the future?
I'm trying to do what they call the World Six. I think I started that in 2018. I realized I ran two of those races already. What they consider the World Six in marathoning are Chicago, Boston, New York in the United States, Berlin, London, and Tokyo. And since I started in 2008, they've also added two. One is Sydney, Australia, that I'll be doing now at the end of August, and they just added a couple weeks ago Cape Town, South Africa. To be considered a World Six marathon, you have to go through various um, tests that you can put on a big marathon that's appropriate layout of the course and different things like that. So it has to be one of the big ones. They kind of wanted to spread it out, and it is right. You can't. The big three I consider in the United States, is, definitely Boston number one, probably New York number two, Chicago number three.
Now you are a native of Camarillo, California. Oh, you're living in Camarillo now, like me. I'm wondering how many times you've run the LA Marathon or other interstate marathons.
I've run quite a few. I've run LA was when I did the first five marathons, I did them by myself. And on my fifth one, had another bad experience. And I'm going, maybe this marathoning isn't for me. Uh, It got very hot that day. The day before, I'd done everything wrong. I didn't hydrate properly. Matter of fact, my kids were pretty small at that time, and it was in San Diego. And the day before, I was out in the ocean, believe it or not, with my kids, swimming. The next day, it got really hot. At 22 miles, I stopped to say hi to my family. I basically cramped from the back of my neck to my feet. Okay,
Oh,
so
wow.
I go, maybe this isn't for me. But I had heard of this group that trains for the LA Marathon. They usually just had a group in Venice, but they were starting a group in Ventura, close to where I live. And I go, oh, great. For $40, I can, have a coach. I can get all the Gatorade and water I want and bananas and things like that so I can get further distance. Unbeknownst to me, it changed my marathoning because um, I had coaching number one, okay, instead of reading it out of a book. And I ran with people that had a common interest, and that made all the difference in the world. I mean,
Hmm.
when you're running with a group, 18 miles doesn't seem as far than by yourself. And that changed everything. So we were training for LA Marathon. So I think I've run now 10 or 11 LA marathons and that.
And you have whenever you do one of these marathons, you receive kind of a medal of some sort. And do you
Right.
have those somewhere in your house or your room?
I do. I have them just to my left here. My daughter was nice enough to give me a board. One says I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Got a bunch of medals on that. I can imagine 51 marathon medals. And the other board, because I needed two boards, the other one says I just felt like running, the famous Forrest Gump quote. And that,
Oh, so
yeah,
you've got a biblical quote and a Forrest Gump quote.
right, exactly. My daughter got them for me. So um,
Oh, that's
yeah,
nice.
yeah. But other California ones I've run, Rock and Roll in San Diego. I've run one that is very rated high for beauty is the one in Carmel, California, Monterey. They call it Big Sur Marathon.
Hmm.
I've run the one in Sacramento. Um, and locally here I've run Ventura Marathon. They have one, they have two marathons in Ventura. One's called Ventura Marathon, one's called Mountains to the Beach, and I've run both of those marathons.
Okay, so can you tell us what is your, out of all of those, do you have a favorite or a few favorites that you really felt were notable? And then do you have a few that were your least favorite that you would like to mention? And maybe you won't want to mention those three least favorites or so because you don't want to say anything unkind about anybody. But
Well,
it's up to you. Tell me your favorite and worst as much as you
yeah,
can
you
here.
know what? They're all unique. All marathons are unique. Up until I ran London, I would say New York City was my favorite. And it wasn't because of the course or anything like that. It was because of the people. I mean, it
Oh,
was packed the whole way. It was the first marathon, I believe, to go over 50,000 runners. And I don't care if you were the first runner or the 50,000 runner, the spectators stayed out there and cheered for you. And
really?
it was very um, and spine tingling almost when you start out way out in Staten Island and you cover all five boroughs. But then at about 23 miles, you finally, well, at about 16 miles, you come off the Queensboro Bridge, or they call it the 59th Street Bridge. And it's the first time you hit Manhattan. And it's one of the few places where there's no spectators. It's just a metal bridge. And all you can hear is the pitter patter of feet, pitter patter, pitter patter, pitter patter. But then you can hear the crowd building. And as you come up this little hill in the bridge and you come off and you take a turn towards Second Street in Manhattan, the crowds are going crazy. And then you turn on Second Street and they call that like the fan tunnel or something like that. I've volunteered on that before, giving out Gatorade and water. It's just quite an experience, and the spectators are awesome. I just did London, like I said, and I was very surprised. The course was packed the whole way with spectators. They were so into it. They were so kind. I heard "well done" probably over 1,000 times, things like that. So New York's one of my favorite. A lot of people go, Boston. That's the oldest marathon, you know, um, in the United States. Started like 1898, I believe. I'm more of a, believe it or not, even though I grew up in Minnesota in the rural area. I'll put that way. I grew up on a farm, so running there was on country roads, on gravel roads. Um, I've I love urban running. Give me downtown New York, Philly, things like that. Boston was, take you out 26 miles and run back to Boston. Okay, it was a great course. It's one of the historic courses, but I'd rather be, I think, in urban area and things like that.
And are you saying that in the New York Marathon, you had people lining the streets every mile of the way, except for
Yeah.
that brief time in that tunnel?
Bridge. Yeah, the bridge, exactly. They wouldn't let anybody on that 59th Street Bridge and that. Same as I just did London. There were there were people, I don't know, at least 8 to 10 deep the whole way, except for a couple tunnels we went through in London. And
Wow.
yeah, it's amazing. And that the support we get and that um I got I got pretty fast. I had Boston qualifying times, obviously. I got pretty fast at 55, believe it or not. I had retired from being air traffic controller. I was living in Southern California where I trained mostly in Southern California was along the coast. Okay. So about the same temperature, things like that. And I always had issues when I had to go to hot areas and run. Okay. So in 2010, I moved back to Minnesota for 4.5 years to be with my parents who had, my mom was sick and I joined a group there. And all of a sudden, I went from one coaches to three coaches. They trained in Minnesota, believe it or not, is very, very humid in the summer, and I train in humidity. And just training in that area made me a much better runner where I wasn't afraid to go to Maui and run or Philly or whatever. It could be very, very hot, things like that. Um, so, yeah, where was I going with that?
Oh, that's okay. No, no.
Whoa. Okay.
I
So,
like anything you have to say. Any digressions are welcome.
yeah.
So, let's see.
Well,
So you told us a couple of your favorites and that you like
yeah.
running in the
Some of
urban.
my other least favorites, right?
Yeah.
Again, let me see. Let me see. You know what? I really don't have any least favorite. They're all really unique. That's what makes marathon running so tough is um it's not tough, but challenging. Okay, I'm going to say challenging because you know you could, let's say you've trained really hard for 3 or 4 months. Okay, you're ready for the marathon. Okay, but there's so many unknowns. Okay, you don't know how you're going to feel that day. You might come up with a cold or anything like that. You don't know what the weather's going to be, All of a sudden it could be really hot or really cold or windy or rainy or whatever. There's just so many variables to it, and that's why it makes it so challenging and fun, okay? And that's what I've really, really enjoyed with it and that. And just the great experiences, like running into Detroit, what makes me I've run with a lot of fellow runners, and Detroit was so cool where we went across this big bridge into Windsor, Canada. Okay. So I go,
Oh, I know that
ooh,
bridge. I've been across
yeah.
it.
Yeah. And then we ran in Windsor, Canada for about 6 miles. And then we came back underneath the river in a tunnel. And then we jumped on
Oh,
Detroit again. That was so cool. Just, memories like that. Running Big Sur i- in Runner's World, the Runner's Magazine, Big Sur is classified as one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful marathon. And it really is. They take you to Pfeiffer State Beach from Monterey, and you run from Pfeiffer State Beach on the PCH all the way back to Carmel. And they have this at the midpoint of 13.1 miles. They have a guy playing a grand piano, like in Tales. You know what I mean? The first time I
wow.
ran it was before like cell phones, you could take pictures. I actually took an instant camera with me, was just clicking photos as I went along, and then I gave it to a friend about halfway after I run out of film and things like that. But
Wow.
just things like that.
Okay, okay. So you would say every marathon you run is special and unique in its own way, and it's hard
Right.
to say this one wasn't my favorite and this I got you, I got you. But you do like the urban setting mostly.
I do. I do.
Okay, that's
Exactly.
great. I was wondering, what does it you mentioned that the day before a marathon you hadn't prepared properly and you regretted it. Can you tell us now that you've learned all these different strategies and tactics for preparation? What does the day before the marathon look like for you? Are you fasting from certain things? Are you loading carbs like spaghetti? What's the day before like for you? Please run us through it a little bit.
Yeah. The day before it is really important that you hydrate properly, get as much fluids in it as possible. Okay. That's really, really important. Um, Another thing is not to be on your feet too long, okay? You shouldn't be out running around or anything like that. You should be relaxing the day before, okay? I found out it's more important. They always say carbs, carbs, carbs for marathoners. You need lots of carbs, okay? You're gonna go through a lot of calories as you're running. They say, and a lot of coaches say, the most important sleep and the most important meal isn't on Saturday. Let's say you have a Sunday marathon. The most important sleep in the meal is Friday, 2 days before. Okay. And I've kind of found that true. I make sure that I get a good sleep on that Friday if possible. And I have lots of carbs. I have some carbs too the Saturday, the day before, but I think it's more important 2 days out. And that's just been my experience. But the most important thing is hydrate, 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 because um, you don't, you know, believe it or not, for me, anything above 65 totally changes the race, 65 degrees. It's just that point. I'm a bigger runner. I perspire a lot. And um, if it gets above that, it's tough for me to get enough fluids in as I'm going. And I've always used, I use, water and Gatorade, things like that. There's a lot of different sports drinks out there that runners use and that. And then I also supplement it with there's power gel out there. I personally use a thing called goo, and that it's got, sodium in it. It's got, some caffeine. It's got electrolytes that we're losing, and we use that. Um, so, but the day before is mainly hydrate, stay off your feet as much as possible. And that's kind of tough you know, um, when you like you. let's say you traveled to a marathon and then you've just like driven in that day or whatever, you have to go get your number, things like that. Okay. So you're on your feet a lot. It's better if you kind of do that on the Friday and that. So
And you said you didn't. What about the carbo loading? I heard that that's what you need to do. Eat a ton of spaghetti the night before. Do you agree with carbo loading, or or do you not eat much at all on that day before?
I totally agree with carbo loading, but I'm more into it 2 days from the race than the day of the race. Do I do carbs on the day before the race? Yes. But
Okay,
I think it's more important 48 hours prior that you do carbs also and that. So yeah. My famous thing is I don't I just have like spaghetti with marinara sauce. I don't do that much protein or anything like that. That's what works for me. Everybody has a little different, but definitely a lot of carbs in that. So, yeah.
okay. And you mentioned do you get a lot of injuries from marathoning, or you get soreness in certain joints? And does it get worse as you get older, or are you able to maintain that physical prowess? Tell me about the physical side of it and what injuries you may or may not have had.
I think if you're following a program, you're listening to a coach, that you know, you can stay away from injuries. Runners, um, y- there's can get all sorts of injuries, you know what I mean? From knee injuries to Achilles, things like that. Let's say you first start running marathons, you're gonna have soreness obviously when you first train. Most people that have never run a marathon, they'll start training at about 6 months out. If you have like a base of 10 miles, if you're doing like 10-mile runs and then you come in for marathon training, you can cut that down to probably 3 months for training. But if you never ran a marathon and you just want to start training, it's usually 6 months, And
Wow.
it's they say you're not supposed to increase mileage over like 10% per week. I don't know the exact same thing, but don't try to go from mile 3 to mile 13 in
Hmm.
1 week, okay? You have to be really, really cautious of that. And when I do marathon training and different programs, but most of the coaches I've had over the years, when we get up, for example, I just did 18 today, okay? I'm getting ready
Mm.
for Sydney. So next week, I'll pull back to 12, okay? So as we're increasing mileage, you want to do at least 2 or 3 20 uh, mile runs before you do a marathon, okay? As it gets older, it gets tougher to do that, okay? So I kind of modify my program now. But um, what you want to do is as you increase mileage, whether it be, once you get 16 or above, you want to do 16, you want to back it off to 12. Then you want to maybe increase it to 18, back it off to 12, then 20, 12. With that down week, that helps you prevent injury. If you're always pushing mileage high, you're prone to more injury and that. So
Okay.
I
And
found
then
that out. You
well,
know,
did
now
you ever
this is more for, us casual runners, not for elite runners, okay? These elite runners are pretty crazy. They're doing, 100-mile weeks and things like that. I'm doing in my heyday, I was doing like 35, 40-mile weeks,
Hmm.
Now, because I'm 70 years old, I'm trying to stay injury free as much as possible. Like this week I've done 25 miles, okay? But I really emphasize I do some speed training during the week and then I do a long run too, okay? And that speed training is just what it sounds like, just to develop some speed. And the long runs are really important because they get your body used to being on your feet a long time. Your body has to get used to that and that. So, yeah. I hope that answered the
Well,
question.
that does answer my question, but I have a follow-up to that. Um, have you ever been injured during a race where you pulled something, a calf or a thigh or something, or your feet started really hurting, where you had an injury that you got during it, but you still completed the marathon in certain amount of pain? Did you ever have something like that happen?
Of course. I wouldn't say injury, but when I first started running, I had problems with cramps and that. I mean,
Oh.
bad cramps that would, groin cramps that would take the whole leg. Okay, very painful. And then I've had hamstring cramps. Okay, and you really, really have to pull back on that because you could, really. you could tear your hamstring, and that. So I've never, those are I don't know if you call them injuries, but that's what's come up for me, during a race that's debilitating in that. Um, I've run marathons from, probably 34 degrees on one marathon to 92 degrees on an LA one year. And that was, really, really tough and you can't get enough fluids down and for me, it caused a lot of cramping and things like that. And that, because
Mm,
I've completed 51 marathons, I've actually started 54 marathons. And that one San Diego one at 22, I pulled out because of the cramping. One I made it to 24, and that was that 92-degree LA one. And I sat down by these firemen. I go, if I'm going to pass out or anything, at least I'm right by them. And I
yes.
had another marathon. Remember, I always doubled them up, and I had another marathon in San Diego about a month away. And I go, if I continue, I can really hurt this hamstring that was really cramping. So I'm thinking,
Oh,
I pulled out at that point, and I was very glad because I did a very good San Diego marathon that in a month, and I couldn't have
oh,
done that if I would continued and really hurt the hamstring and that. So um, usually the injuries happen during training and things like that, like an Achilles, knee issues, um, back issues, things like that. You
I
know,
gotcha.
yeah.
I was wondering what times you've gotten on your marathons. Have you broken the 2 hour holy grail of marathon times, or have
No,
you?
no, no, no. You have to remember, I started at 43, okay? And I'm really
Yeah.
proud of myself because my times, like I said, was like really bad, 5:30. And then the next time I got it down to 4:45, and I go, ooh, wow, that is so cool. And I never even dreamt of a Boston time, to tell you the truth, because Boston qualifying time it depends on your age and things like that.
Uh-huh.
But qualifying times are pretty tough. And I was like, you know, an hour away probably. But then over the years, I just kind of kept getting a little faster and faster. And then when I moved to Minnesota, like I said, um, all of a sudden I had three coaches, and we trained in all sorts of weather, whether it was snowing and 10 below, or whether it was, a 95 degrees and humid. We were out there running. Made me
10
much
below.
better. Right. Yeah, 10. I've run a race. I ran a 5K in Minnesota, and it was minus 15 Fahrenheit. And that
Oh my
as you
goodness.
run, I had like a ski mask on, and you know, and as you run and everybody's breathing really hard, everybody froths up from how cold it is,
I can
and
imagine.
yeah, and things like that. Um, so, what was the question again? I got off the thing.
The question was, what are your timings like?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
What's
anyway,
what's your best time?
yeah. So anyway, I kept getting better and better. And then my best time, I've done 3:45 twice. And that's when I was 55 years old, Boston qualifying time. I've done the magic number for me has been 4 hours. Okay. And I've done, I think, 5 or 6 races under 4 hours and that. Um, Now, as you as you get like 70 years old, there's not as many people marathon at 70 years old. So it's not so much the times anymore. It's more like the challenge. I know I just probably have two left. I'm trying to do the World Six, like I said. So hopefully get Sydney and then hopefully at Tokyo. And then, I still like running, back off to halves or 10Ks or things like that, um,
Yeah.
and that. So, but, I worked it from a ridiculous, really time to, over time working it to Boston qualifying times, and that. So, yeah.
And so you're saying the gold standard for you is to break 4 hours, and you've done that on about 6 occasions, you said?
Right, right, right. Exactly. Now, right now, I can't touch 6 hours. I mean 4 hours. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. Right now, I'd be very happy at like 5:30. Okay, and
okay.
things like that. So, yeah,
And and if you're I want to talk about your best time real quick there. 3 hours, 45 minutes. How does that break down? Um, how many miles per minute per
yeah. I know it's 8 minutes and 34 seconds a
there we
mile.
go.
Okay,
That's what, so
exactly,
that's about
exactly.
8 minutes and 34 seconds per mile. Got it.
426.2 miles.
And you did mention that your age at age 70, I'm wondering, do they break the group into categories like age 40 to 50, age 50 to 60, age 60 to 70? And do they cut you some slack on how they're going to judge that? I mean, do you have others in your age group that are compared to you, you're like one of the best? Because I know when you look at those guys from Kenya or whatever running in 2 miles, you're not going to compete with that, but you might be having competition within your own age group. Is there a way of finding out how high you are time wise within your specific age group?
Exactly. And that's what makes it fun. You run mostly if if you want to look at your age group, that's who you're running with or
That's right.
running against. The age
Yes.
groups are usually in increments of 5 years, okay? So like 50 to 54, 55 to 59, 60 to 64, things like that,
Mm.
okay? You know, um, and there's when I go to marathons today, I just go, oh, I love all the young people running marathons. This is awesome, things like that. I know that there's a big cutoff for people once they turn 60 running marathons. And I know why. I hardly had any injuries, to tell you the truth, from 43 to 59. And I swear I turned 60 and all of a sudden I have this injury, that injury, and that. It's just, marathon, I wouldn't say, the, the race isn't the problem. It's the preparing for the race. That's the problem. Because you have to log a lot of miles. And you have to get your body ready for 26.2 miles, okay? And that takes a lot of pounding and that, you know what I mean? Because I was saying, if you're training properly, you should run at least 320s somewhere along the line, okay? And
Yeah.
that's building up to 320s too. You have to,
Mm.
14, 16, 18, and 20s. That's a lot of mileage. And that the older you get, the tougher your body just can't take the pounding like that anymore. So, you have to adapt, however that person adapts to getting their body ready, and that's
Do you supplement your marathon running and your practice marathons with any other kind of physical activity? Do you do weight training or special stretching exercises? What else do you do besides marathon running to prepare for marathon running?
that's a great question because as you get older, you can't run as much, okay? So you have to supplement it with other things, okay? Um, Number one, stretching is very, very important as you get older, okay? You know, you have to keep loose. You can't get hard. For example, I'm making sure I do back stretches, obviously, for my back. I do a lot of leg stretches for hamstrings and Achilles, things like that, okay? What I do to supplement instead of running, I can just run now like 3 days a week, okay? I used to run 6 days a week and take one day,
Oh, okay.
okay?
Yeah.
Now, what I supplement, you need some cardio. I still need cardio, okay? So I either do elliptical training, which is non-weight bearing, so that'll help with the stresses, and or spinning, bicycling,
And
Uh,
how often would you do those? Once per week, twice per week, or
um, I'd still be working out 5 or 6 days a week. And if I'm
Hmm,
running three, then I supplement the other days. And then along with that, I do weight training. Weight's really important, for
okay.
especially legs. And believe it or not, running, you don't think of it, but upper body is really important too, because a good marathoner is using their arms just as much as their legs.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you've ever seen, her name is Paula Radcliffe. She's from England, okay, and she used to be an awesome. She won the Olympic marathon. She's won, lots of other marathons, and the way she runs is like all arms and whatever. And I was taught that you have to use your arms too. It's really important. You got hills and different things like that. Um, I used to run with this one gal that took 20th of all the women in the LA Marathon. Okay.
20th.
Yeah. And I go, what makes you so fast? Number one. Okay. She was like 35 probably at the time. And she was a track person in Southern California, then went to Oklahoma State and ran. But what she did track work, but she did a lot of weights too. And when I ran with her, she always emphasized for me to use my arms, just as much as the legs. So
Oh,
you have to build on those, and the legs are really important, whether it's squats or hamstrings or things like that.
okay. So you're kept quite busy with that. now you're retired, right? Or am I not correct?
Semi-retired, still sub-teach, which I love. I love, working with the kids in that. So, like
You
today
were
when I was out running, I saw a lot of high school cross-country runners getting ready for the season. That, I love seeing stuff like that, and
you like to see the younger group coming up, and
exactly, exactly.
now you're teaching. You're a substitute teacher for elementary school, right?
I do a little of everything, elementary to high school, everything in between.
Do you ever talk to your students about your marathon running and what do they think about it, if they know about it?
I have talked to them about it because one of my things is, I come into the classroom, they have no idea who I am, okay, and things like that. So I introduce myself, and I go, one of my hobbies, is marathon running and things like that. And I usually in that class, let's say it's high school, I probably have somebody in the cross country team or the track team, so they're always interested of my times and where I ran and things like that, Um, and I think they're surprised sometimes that the places I've run, gives them impetus to want to do it. Marathon running isn't quite for the, I wouldn't say for the 20-year-old, probably 30-year-old. You have to kind of build into it. There are 20-year-olds that do it and things like that. So I think they're excited that they can go places and run. It's the best way to see a town. They close
Wow.
all the streets for you and you're running. And like I was in London, we ran across the Tower Bridge, no traffic, no nothing. And, ran across it, went right by Buckingham Palace and,
Wow.
it's a great way to see a city and that. So, but yeah, I've shared it and it's developed into questions, which I'm glad to answer for the kids and that.
Wonderful. And now when you go to a certain place for a marathon that happens to be a touristy place like London and New York and Boston, do you have time to be a tourist or you only stay for that one day doing the marathon, then you jet home? Or do you linger around and become a tourist in any of these places?
What I usually do is it's all marathon prep and getting ready for the marathon, and then after it, I usually stay and do the tourist things.
Okay.
Um, Depends how much time. When I did in London, I went in early enough that I came in on Thursday. On Friday, I was with a group, and we did like a half-day tour of London. But that was about it before. Saturday is rest and, like I said, hydrate and getting ready for the marathon and things like that. I like early morning marathons. London was pretty late in that, so yeah, it's more like um, doing the tourist stuff afterwards. Definitely, and that. I have
Okay.
a friend that's doing Sydney with me, and she's doing the opposite. She's going to Australia now August 1st and doing the tourist stuff first, and then doing the marathon. Um, I would, it cuts down on training and that because you know where to run when you're local and you know, that once you go someplace, it's tougher to find, places to do long runs and stuff. But
Mm.
everybody does a little different in that. So it's not one right or one wrong or anything like that. But I like to concentrate on the marathon until the marathon, then I got time to be a tourist.
What's the strangest thing that ever happened to you on one of those marathons?
Hmm.
Unexpected, interesting, provocative? Did any dogs run out and try to attack you and you're got a dog nipping at your heels or
No, no dogs. Okay. I remember I was on Second Street in New York City, and you have to remember there's like 50,000 runners. It's very crowded, and this person in a shopping cart somehow got on the course and was crossing across all the runners and that. And people are going, "Watch out!" Whatever. And so that was
oh
pretty crazy. I don't think anybody got hit, but it was pretty crazy.
that
And
is
that
crazy.
that's one thing I can remember. Um, I've um, run races where that Detroit one I was talking about, where it was in October. We're talking like mid-October, and at the beginning there were snowflakes, okay, to the end where it was, sunny and getting okay. Um, I don't want to bring it down or anything like that, but when you have 50,000 runners or 30,000 runners, okay, there's going to people that that go down, you know what I mean?
They
Um,
fall down and faint.
you know, yeah,
You see
heart
you
attacks or and
have
or
you
injury. or things like that,
Have you ever witnessed someone actually fainting on the road that you were running on?
I have. I was in Maui, and it was near the start. We were like at probably 2, 3 miles, and this gentleman went down, and
Oh,
right in front of us. And me and my friends, we stopped, and we start, going, okay, he's not breathing. We need to start, CPR, things like that. And so lucky for this gentleman that went down, a doctor that was running came in right behind us,
no.
and obviously we let him take over. I was running with kind of a nurse. Well, she was a dietitian. Okay. So that was
Okay.
pretty nice. Okay. So
Yeah.
she had kind of started, we had lifted his head and make sure he wasn't breathing. We're going to start CPR, and this doctor came in. Long story short. So that's pretty, you see stuff like that, but this was the closest one where I ever had to stop and, and render aid. You know what I mean? Um, but the long story short is this guy survived.
Good.
He was revived on the course, taken to a hospital, and then he survived. But
How did you find out about him later? If you didn't know him,
you know what? It was like made known to us somehow. And
was
that,
it maybe it was in the newspaper and you read about it the next day, or
yeah, I don't remember exactly how I did it, but it was going, for the guy that went down at mile blah 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 3. He got to the hospital, and he wants to say thank you for everybody that rendered aid to him, and especially this doctor that came along and that then brought him back. So I remember he survived and things like that. Yeah.
well,
So
I think it's very admirable that you and your friends stopped because other people might have just kept on going, and I'm sure there must have been some like that because they
right.
don't want to cut into their valuable marathon and
Right. But we saw him kind of, matter of fact, there was kind of a guardrail, and he actually walked over the guardrail, and he didn't look very good. And then all of a sudden he collapsed, and
Hmm.
things like that. What was really amazing is in some of these marathons is you see people hurting. I mean, limping very bad, or, different things like that. And they, they want to complete it. I mean, it's same way, but the pain they're going through or whatever. And you know, um, as we go by, we try to give them encouragement. I think a lot of us, if not all of us, have been at a point in a marathon where we're not feeling good, or we're
I'll
really
say.
hurting and things like that. It's not, I don't like the saying of, you know, um, you can do it, or we're really close to the end. It's more like, you're looking good, and just hang in there, and things like that. So
Well, you truly were a good Samaritan there to help that guy. Let
thank
me,
you.
which reminds me of one other question I have. We're almost done with our hour here. Are you saying thank God we're almost done with?
No,
Okay,
I,
okay,
I,
okay.
I think the questions have been very, very good. To tell you the
Okay,
truth.
good, good. And the
Yeah.
answers have been great. So I'm happy, you're happy. Let's do 10 more minutes here.
Okay.
Um, I'm I was wondering when you're the Good Samaritan and someone is hurting, you know what's funny? I now lost my train of thought.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. We can go to a different area or whatever.
But
But
let's do a different area, and if that question comes back, I'll let you know. So, is there anything about marathon running that I haven't covered that you think an interested audience should know? What would your advice be for someone who's going to do their marathon for the first time?
okay.
And maybe you've had that already happen in your life.
Right. I've been with a group that will take you from running a mile to running a marathon. Okay. And number one is, is have run a little, 1 to 3 miles or whatever. Okay. And then just you here's the important part. Don't do it on your own, okay? If you're a first time marathoner, go find a group. Go find a group that has coaches, or run with somebody that knows that has run marathons that can train you, okay? Running by yourself, even with AirPods in and music, doesn't cut it, okay? What changed my marathoning for me, I can just tell my personal experience was I ran 5 on my own. Um, was there some satisfaction? There was some satisfaction, but I wasn't doing things properly. I was increasing my
Oh,
mileage too much. Remember on my fifth one, I almost basically killed myself, cramping from my neck to my feet. And then I was taught what to do, running with other people, increasing my mileage properly. And when you're running with a group, it makes it so much fun. When you're out there running 20 miles or whatever with a group, you're we're not sprinting, okay? As you train, you want to train about a minute to a minute and a half slower than your actual marathon pace, okay? So
okay.
you should be able to maintain a conversational level as you run, okay? And that's a good
Oh,
indication if you're going too fast training in a marathon for a marathon, this is training, okay? Is is you can't keep a conversation, you need to pull back somewhat, okay? And things like that. So so there's always some talking and things like that. And, training goes much faster. I would say a 20-mile run with a group um, is as painful like 10 miles on your own. Okay. You know what I mean? And that makes all the difference in the world. So I always do that. I always say on your off day when you're not training with the group, keep it fresh. Um, don't ever run the same way twice. That's what I do. If I go, I have a course and I go one way one day and I'll go the other. Just keep it really, really fresh. Okay. Don't get bored with it. Okay. Um, and that just have fun with it. Because, if you're not having fun, why be out there? I've run with people that do one marathon and it's on their bucket list. And I congratulate those people. Okay. You know what I mean? They had a goal, they want to do a marathon, check it off their bucket list. But then there's people that, like me, that go, ooh, I wonder if I could get better or faster or whatever. I like this camaraderie, and that, and you never know. I met this one gal and she's my running partner now. Um, she had never run over like a 5K or 10K, and I met her on a track and she would just run around the track. And I met her and we started talking and she goes, yeah, I do, 5Ks, maybe 10Ks. I go, do you ever do road running? Or are you always around this track? She goes, I'm always around this track. I go, that's no fun. I go, come with me. We're going to do some road running. Okay. We're going to make it fun. You know what I mean? And, um, all of a sudden she did a half marathon with me and then I trained her for a marathon. And I think
wow.
she's done like 4 marathons now in that. And today she was running with me on that 18. So, yeah, you
Well,
never
my,
make it
that,
fun.
it's funny because you answered my question that I forgot even before I remembered
Oh,
it. And
okay.
that question was, and will be our final question here.
Okay.
Is there a real sense of camaraderie among the people running? And I think you've already kind of answered much of that. How's the camaraderie in general during and before and even after the run? Do you meet people that have become friends for life or people who exchange numbers and never called each other? Uh, or is there not? I'm assuming there's a sense of camaraderie because you're all going through this difficult physical challenge, and so this guy's rowing the same boat that you are in a way. Can you tell me a little bit more about the camaraderie in general, not just this woman you met?
Right. In general, you know, I don't, in our training group, we could have somebody train for marathons. We could somebody hit training for 10Ks, 6.2 miles, or a half marathon. It really doesn't matter. We all have a common goal, okay? And that's doing the best in the race we're doing, okay? And what's so cool is, and I want to add this is, when I went to like Stockholm or Berlin, and I'm talking with people that I met this one sticks in my mind. We're waiting for the start in Stockholm. We're kind of on this soccer field. We're on a soccer field, and I met this person from Estonia. I had no idea where Estonia was. Okay, it's really across the water from Sweden, but there's a common language you can talk, even if they don't know English or whatever, and that you could talk about running. And that's when I'm running these international races and I'm going by guys from Italy or whatever. There's a commonality to it, and we can all talk running. You know what I mean? And that's so
So it's like
it's an international language.
well, they say about music that music is the universal language, but we can say about running it's an international language, right?
I agree. I agree. And that's what's so cool about it, no matter where you go
Okay,
to run and that. So, yeah, you develop long time friendships. You know what I mean? Running,
wonderful.
you really do. and that.
How
So,
many friends do you have now that were just from meeting during a marathon,
meeting during a marathon.
or before,
Oh,
after, or
oh,
during?
yeah, many. Like I just did a little 5K race on Wednesday, and I've done different groups over the years, and it was good to see a lot of people that were in my group 20 years ago that, they're still out there running, but they're not in the group and things like that. It's good to see those people,
I
and
can
that,
imagine. Yeah, the common goal is a good thing
right.
to mention there. Okay, Craig, we're pretty much done with our hour here. Do
Okay.
you have any final thoughts, or have we covered the waterfront pretty much?
I think we've covered the waterfront. Thank you for the really good questions. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Okay.
All right, maybe we'll have you back for something else someday, okay?
Okay. Sounds good.
Take care. God bless.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.